Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have used some leftover fabric to make a bralette. This was so fun to make and uses your own measurements to make a custom pattern, which I'll also be explaining in this video. So let's get into it. This fabric was left over from a different project, but I thought it was a nice colour to use for the bralette. This will be the lining fabric of my bralette. This lace is what I had left from my pillowcase to pyjamas video. I'll leave a link to that video below if you want to check that out. This lace will be the top layer of my bralette. First, I needed to make my pattern. To make this pattern, I needed to take 4 measurements: A, B, C and D. The A measurement is where the centre of the bralette cup will sit to where you want the cups to end. The B measurement is from the end of the A measurement going around to your side. This is where the side of the bralette cup will end. The D measurement is from the end of the A measurement going to the centre of your chest, where the other side of the cup will end. And the C measurement is going from the centre of where the bralette cup will sit to wherever you want the cup to end. These are my measurements as a reference, but of course yours will differ slightly. If your B and D measurements are the same, then you'll only need one pattern piece. If your B and D measurements are different, like mine, you'll need an outer and inner pattern piece to make your bralette cups. It may sound a bit confusing, but I hope it makes sense once I show you how to make the pattern pieces. I'm making my outer pattern piece first. I started by using a piece of A4 paper and drawing a straight line down the page 1/2 inch from the edge. This acts as a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Next, from this line, I drew my B measurement straight across. Then, from the end of that line, I drew my A measurement straight up. Next, I drew a diagonal line from the end of the A line, so it met the side line with the measurement being my C measurement. I then made a mark 1 inch down from the B line and joined it up diagonally with this corner. Next, I marked the centre of my A and C lines and joined these with a curved line to round the corner out. Lastly, I drew a 1/2 inch seam allowance around the entire shape. This was my outer pattern piece complete. I then cut this out. To make my inner pattern piece, I did the same thing, but this time I replaced my B measurement with my D measurement. This was my inner pattern piece complete. I then cut this out. I now had my 2 pattern pieces. I could now start making my bralette. I started with the red fabric, which would be the lining. Taking my outer pattern piece, I placed it with the straight edge against the straight edge of the fabric and pinned it in place. This would stop the fabric from moving while I cut out the pieces of fabric. I then repeated this with my inner pattern piece. I then cut around these pieces. I had one outer and one inner piece. I then repeated this so I had 2 of each. These were my lining pieces. Next, I repeated this with the lace, so I had 2 outer pieces and 2 inner pieces. These were my top layer pieces. I now had 4 inner pieces and 4 outer pieces. I can now start making the cups for my bralette. Taking 2 inner pieces, 1 lining and 1 top layer, I placed these right sides together and pinned along the straight and curved edges, leaving the bottom open. I then repeated this with all my other pieces. This is how they looked. Once everything was pinned in place, I sewed where I'd pinned. I now had 2 outer pieces and 2 inner pieces. Next, I cut the excess fabric off each piece and turned these pieces inside out so they were now the right way round. This is what I had so far, my 2 inner pieces and 2 outer pieces. I then took 1 inner piece and 1 outer piece, placed them right sides together and pinned along the curved edge. I repeated this for my other 2 pieces. I then sewed where I'd pinned. This is how it looked. Once they were sewn, I cut off any excess fabric. I unfolded these pieces so I had my 2 cups for my bralette. On to making the band. Taking a piece of elastic, I wrapped this around my body where I wanted my bralette to sit. I pulled the elastic so it was a bit tight but still a comfortable fit, and cut it to this length. I then folded this in half, right sides together, and sewed across the open end, creating a loop. Next, I needed to attach the cups to the band. I put the elastic band on and flipped it over so the wrong side of the elastic was facing out. Taking 1 cup and making sure the inner piece was nearer the centre of my chest, I placed it where I wanted it to sit. Then I made a mark on my elastic where both ends of the cup sat. I repeated this for the second cup and made sure I was happy with the placement. I then placed the cups inside the band so the right sides were together. As the marks on the band didn't match up with the ends of the cup, I needed to stretch the elastic to make sure the cups would be attached to the right place. I sewed the bottom edge of the cup to the bottom edge of the elastic with the right sides together. To make sure the ends of the cups matched up with the marks I had made on the band, I stretched the elastic band as I sewed. I then repeated this for the second cup. Once both cups were sewn on, I folded the band down and the main part of the bralette was complete. The final step was to attach the straps. For the straps, I used some elastic that was thinner than the elastic I had used for the band. With the bralette on, I needed to work out how long the straps needed to be. I tucked the elastic behind the cups about ½ an inch from the edge and made sure the elastic would reach the band at the back while being pulled slightly. I then cut 2 pieces of elastic to this length. I started by attaching the straps to the front of the bralette first. I tucked the elastic behind the cup about half an inch from the edge and pinned this in place. I repeated this for the second cup with the second piece of elastic. I then sewed the straps in place. I sewed these on by hand as I would have more control this way, but you can use a sewing machine if you prefer to. This is how they looked. I then needed to attach the straps to the back of the bralette. I made sure that the join in the elastic was in the middle and also made sure that the ends of the strap would line up with the front. I tucked the elastic behind the band about half an inch from the top edge and pinned this in place. I then repeated this with the second strap. I then sewed the straps in place. The bralette was now complete and this is how it looked. I was so happy with how this turned out. This is a great way to use leftover fabric and it's also a good way to have something unique. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video.